from Matthew 16, verses 24 through 17:8. Then Jesus told his disciples, "If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit them if they gain the whole world but forfeit their life? Or what will they give in return for their life? For the Son of Man is to come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and then he will repay everyone for what has been done. Truly I tell you, there are some standing here who will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and his brother John and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly, there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with him. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will make 3 dwellings here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." While he was still speaking, suddenly a bright cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud a voice said, "This is my Son, the Beloved. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." When the disciples heard this, they fell to the ground and were overcome by fear. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, "Get up and do not be afraid." And when they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus himself alone. Word of God, word of life.
Thanks be to God.
Friends in Christ, God's grace to you and peace and from the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. No one likes to be told that suffering is necessary. Nobody likes to be told that loss is necessary. And yet Jesus is delivering that message to his disciples as he gives his conversation with them on the road. He has told them about the necessity of his going to Jerusalem. And when he gets there, he will suffer and die. And they struggle with that. But now he says, if you'd follow me, you have to pick up your own cross. That is the cross beam by which people were hung on the cross. You have to pick up your own cross and carry it too. Nobody likes to hear that. Do you suppose they did? I don't think so. Sometimes suffering is necessary. And it was necessary for Jesus. And it was necessary for those disciples who came and followed him. In fact, they would lose their lives finally, wouldn't they? For his sake. But it's good that we also have the whole story here, including Jesus on the Mountain of Transfiguration. Because we see that God's final plan is not for suffering and death, but for life and beauty. It's God's intention to turn us by love from being curved in on ourselves to being open to the love of God and to the world. And that involves some loss. But in the end, what God has prepared is beautiful and good. Why is it good that we see all of this together? Well, have you ever known Christians who, when someone is suffering, just say, well, you got to bear your cross? As if that's the end of the story. But when we can, don't we want to relieve someone's suffering? When we can, don't we want to help? Not just say, well, that's the way it is, but to do what we can to reach toward what we see God intending finally for us as human beings. Oh, we just got a glimpse today. A taste. And we know that's not all. That's not the end. Just like the disciples, we don't get to stay there. But the glimpse can make a difference, can't it? The glimpse of glory and restoration. The people loved their memories of those who brought God into their presence by words, by deeds, Moses and Elijah. Now, a few of Jesus' disciples got to see them alive. Imagine what that meant. To strengthen them for what came ahead. To strengthen them for their walk with Jesus to Jerusalem. And their walk to carry Jesus' love and word all over the world. Imagine what it meant to see that, taste of what God has prepared. Yes, the suffering was necessary. Jesus' suffering was necessary so that we could see, with no question, his love for us. That he loved us that much. That he stretched his arms out on the cross for us and died. And we see that taste of what he intends for us. Restored and healed. It's really good. I mean, I haven't been that fond of the snow lately, but I think it's a good thing we have this bright, shining snow around us on Transfiguration Sunday. So we can picture what Jesus and Moses and Elijah looked like on that mountaintop, shining so brightly. We are by nature curved in on ourselves. That's Luther's best picture of sin. And we don't see God's love, we don't see our neighbors, we don't see anybody. And God's love opens us up to see God and see other people. Then, what will we do? Surely we will share the love of Jesus, the word of Jesus, but also the work of Jesus, healing and restoring. I've shared with you before when I've been here some of the work of Lutheran Community Services. I've talked about our work with refugees. I've talked about our work with people, many of whom are children who have been victims of assault and are seeking to restore them, to help them heal. I'm going to tell you about some of our growing work today. Our growing work now is with seniors, because there are some places where seniors need help and need care, and it's not there. The state has folks to help in some cases, but it doesn't work in every case. So we have something new that's going on in Spokane. Maybe we can spread it around. I'll give you an example. Keep the details down, because this was something that happened in a congregation I was serving. A woman and her adult child ended up in the same house for economic reasons, adults, and that was not a very good thing. Sometimes people shouldn't live with their kids. Some kids shouldn't live with their parents, right? But they were kind of stuck that way for economic reasons. And it wasn't always good. But one day, the mother came to my office absolutely in tears and told me what had gone on. And I said, that's awful. And when she left my office, I called Adult Protective Services with the state of Washington. And I said, this is what's been going on. Can you help? The social worker there was very nice, listened to my concerns, got the ball rolling, and a few weeks later called and said, I'm sorry, we can't. She doesn't qualify as a vulnerable adult. So under the law, I can't help you. And I was really frustrated. Somehow things worked and they are no longer living together in that house. That's all I'll say about that arrangement. But I was so excited when I learned that our agency now has staff to help people in that sort of a situation, where they don't qualify for Adult Protective Services help, but they need somebody to sit down and work through things with them, to make plans, to figure out how to make things better. Another instance is, for instance, when a young person comes and says, Grandma, I need a place to live, and Grandma's loved this young person since they were born. And Grandma says, of course you can come live in my house. And then finds out that the young person is struggling with an addiction and things are not good. Who's going to help Grandma figure out what to do? Well, thankfully now you're part of the solution through your partnership with us, because we've got social workers who'll go sit down with Grandma and figure out what are the options, what can happen, how can she continue to love that grandchild, but love that grandchild in a way that might help them actually get to the point of dealing with the addiction and not maybe helping themselves to stuff from Grandma. Don't you know stories like that? I certainly do, even not beyond my being a pastor. That's a whole, there's a need for folks who can do that. And so that's a growing area for us as Lutheran Community Services Northwest. I'm a baby boomer. I'm about to fully retire in April. I'm a wave of people who are getting older, and we're all going to need help once in a while. And there are those situations that there just isn't somebody there to help us through them. So we're growing into that area. I just found out at my last meeting at the agency that a congregation in Idaho has invited us to talk, explore about the possibility that they may do senior respite care in their congregation. Do you know what senior respite? You probably have something in Pullman. I don't know. Do you? Okay. So they're saying we need a place where those who are the caregivers for older folks who may be struggling with dementia, etc., can bring their loved ones to a safe place, and they can go run their errands, or even just go home and go to sleep and not have an ear open to make sure that everything is okay. And that congregation said, we really want to do this and we want you to be our partner. And our leadership said, let's explore, let's see if we can do that in a community that doesn't have it. When I was a pastor in Yakima, we had Catholic Charities doing that in our congregation's facility, and I got to see what a gift it was for those caregivers. Do you know how often caregivers don't live as long as the one they're caring for when things are really hard? So we're growing into that. And we're growing into Idaho that way because it's not, Idaho isn't the easiest state to do this stuff in. Washington is a whole lot easier to work with, but maybe we can be working in Idaho too. Yeah, sometimes suffering is necessary. But a lot of suffering is unnecessary, and if we can do something about it, don't we want to? God's final will for us is to come through the suffering we have to endure and to have the existence God intends for us that we got just a little vision of today. Jesus and two of the other figures from the scriptures on the mountaintop, shining like the snow is shining in the windows. Glorious. Like Peter, we don't get to build a booth and stay in that glory. But we will be different for having seen it in our mind's eye. I went to visit a congregation, a couple of years ago now, and I said, "What's your picture of heaven? What is the picture you've got in heaven? Is it the one that the cartoonists in the newspaper draw, which is endless clouds and people sitting around on them playing harps and everything is just colorless?" And when Jesus spoke about it, he often spoke about it as a reunion. Well, it's a wedding, but what was a wedding in those days? A wedding feast and everybody gathered together and getting to see everybody you hadn't seen for years. And feasting together and in the joy of each other's company. There's the picture. And a man around my age came up to me afterwards and he said, "Pastor, I had never thought of it that way. I guess I had thought of it the way the cartoonists drew it. And that sounds a whole lot better." The great reunion, the feast, the joy. The beauty. And we get to see a little taste of it in this story. No, we don't get to dodge all the suffering that may be around us, may be in front of us. But we walk together and try our best to encourage, to love, to relieve the suffering that we go through, don't we? We have been loved by Jesus who took it on willingly to open us up from being curved in on ourselves, to open his love into the world. Jesus doesn't say it'll be easy. There will be loss. But what a gain. Keep that picture in your mind. The shining mountaintop. The reunion of people who were long gone. And yet, in God, there they are. Keep that beautiful picture. Populate it with those you love. Populate it with those you love and miss. And see, Jesus says we're going to the cross, but on the other side is Easter.